Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us. You are in the Leadership Institute of CISNA. I'm Susan Lovedy. I'm your host, and I'm so pleased that you have joined us on this journey. My hope is that you will find the benefit in getting expertise from many people throughout the next school year. Every month we're going to meet so that you're able to benefit from their expertise. I think that when I became an assistant principal, the best thing that happened to me is that I was the beneficiary of some excellent professional development from the Illinois Principals Association. That was a 2-day workshop where I had experienced a parade of administrators and superintendents who gave me not really just the information, but the identity of now I am a school leader. And that really is a different mind shift. So I'm so pleased that today we're going to have Brother William White to join us to give us that sort of experience as well. You are leaders and you have huge responsibilities. There's so much to learn, but the beauty of it, as one of those superintendents has expressed to me, that this is the best job in the world. Every day is something new, and nobody can deny the human dynamic. It is always a challenge, but it is always beautiful to see. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm wanting to introduce Brother William White. He is a certified master facilitator for the Leadership Challenge, which you're going to experience today. And it is an internationally recognized research-based leadership program. He's passionate about connecting leadership best practices to Islamic beliefs. He's also an Islamic school principal at the Islamic School of Louisville in Kentucky, a certified lead evaluator for Cognia, and is vice president of CISNA. He is familiar with the strengths, challenges, and effective strategies to help Muslim educators thrive. So welcome, Brother William. I'll let you take it over from here.
Thank you very much, Sister Sue. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, as Sister Sue said, for joining us today. I'd like to say from the beginning is that this session is not going to be simply a lecture. I'm not going to just talk about things and show you a bunch of slides and have you simply take notes, but rather the purpose of this workshop is for me to be a facilitator and not a presenter. So it may be a little bit different from other sorts of workshops you may have experienced in the past. It's really supposed to be all about you and what's relevant to you. So it's going to be very discussion based. If you're in a place where you can talk, that's ideal, right? So you have to unmute if you're able to turn video on, if that's something you're able to do. Also encourage that too, so that we can kind of get a sense of that interaction. Like Sister Sue said, this is meant to be an introduction to the Leadership Challenge, and there are workshops. I myself experienced my first workshop back in October of 2018, and it was a 2-day workshop. So this content can be covered over the course of, say, 14 to 16 hours. Sometimes it can be done in a day. And we're going to be doing just a brief overview and really focusing on one aspect of it that I think really makes sense for you as part of this Leadership Institute. And it's going to be focused on modeling the way. So how your own behaviors, right, should be modeled for other people, right, to be an effective leader. So I'd like to go ahead and take a second to kind of figure out who's in the Zoom room. I see some names down there on my screen, and I see some very familiar names too, alhamdulillah. So who's in the Zoom room? Can you go ahead and type in the chat box just to get us started? So what is your name? What is the organization that you represent? And what is your role? So for me, it would be William White, CISNA, or the Islamic School of Louisville, Vice President of CISNA, and Principal at the Islamic School of Louisville. All right, I see one chat coming in. So Nagin, all right, from the Huda Academy of Little Rock, mashallah. I think this is where Brother Ziad is from, right? Great guy. Great person to work with. So it's nice to meet you. You're the assistant principal.
Yes, Mr. Ziad, that's him. Yeah. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Assalamu alaikum, Aisha Jalani, Medina Academy, Bellevue, Washington, acting principal. Wow. Sister Rana, Assalamu alaikum. I'm glad to be here. Rana El Mamluk. I am the principal at Houston Peace Academy in Spring, Texas. Awesome. So we've got principals, assistant principals. Who else do we have here in the room? So we've got Rana, Nagin, Aisha. We also have Asma and Sayyid. It's the last one that we have here. I'm curious where Asma and Sayyid is from. You can either type in the chat box or Asma, you're welcome to unmute too and share if you'd like.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Sorry, I'm sort of driving here. My name is Asma Sayed. I am the head of school at Hidayah Academy. It's a startup secondary school in Virginia, in the Northern Virginia area. So it's actually in Sterling, Virginia.
Sterling, Virginia, Northern Virginia, mashallah. So you said you are a principal there?
I'm the head of school.
Head of school.
Principal for two years and then became head of school.
MashaAllah.
But also co-founder, so I guess that's why.
Nice, nice, excellent. Well, thank you and welcome. It's nice to meet all of you. I really look forward to working with you in the next couple hours, getting to know you better, and inshallah, this being kind of the beginning of our relationship as we move forward. So a little brief overview of what we're going to talk about today, inshallah. So a brief overview of leadership research. That's done by two authors of the Leadership Challenge, so Kouzes and Posner. We're going to make some connections to this content to Islamic concepts. And really what I hope people see is that what has been found after millions of dollars and decades of academic research for leadership is really just what you would see in the Seerah if you were to read about the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, or in the Quran. Also talk about developing some self-awareness of leadership behaviors and how exactly those behaviors may influence others. And we're going to kind of end this with talking about some of our own personal values, connecting those personal values and talking about what those values might look like in action when you are leading others. So right now, I'd like you to, let's just go ahead, instead of the chat box, let's start with Sister Nagin. So how many years have you worked as a leader? How many years have you gone or worked as a leader? You're muted right now.
Sorry.
How many years?
Okay. Yeah. So last year I was lead teacher of the elementary school. So that was my first year as a leader. And then this year is my first year as assistant principal. So I guess 2 years.
Do you have kids?
I have 3 kids and they're all here.
What's the old?
They're all under the age of 5, so I'm very sorry for any interruptions.
No. I only asked that question for one reason, because you said you've only been a leader for about a year or so.
Yes.
Your oldest kid is 5. Would you say maybe you've been a leader for them for at least 5 years, right?
Absolutely, yes, absolutely. Yeah, it starts when you become a mother or father, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you. Sister Rona, so how many years have you been a leader?
So I was on and off. I was a principal back in Indianapolis, Indiana in the 90s. And I changed the state. So I ran a preschool and then paused for a while for health issues and back to be a principal since 2018.
MashaAllah. Excellent. Sister Aisha? How about Sister Asma? She's driving. Or Sister Aisha's unmuted. How long have you been?
Yeah, I had trouble. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Well, if you're counting being a parent, then I would have been a leader for 30 years. My oldest is 30 years old. But as a school leader, I've always been sort of in a teaching leadership role. But at Medina Academy, this would be my 2nd year.
2nd year. Okay, excellent. So we'll call it 30 years, right? Plus, right? Excellent.
You're very generous. Thank you.
Excellent. Sister Asma?
So I started my journey in education. I graduated in, I think, 2006, and then I became a teacher, a lead teacher since. And I went from school to school, state to state, and now I co-founded this secondary school because we don't have any in our area, Islamic school in our area. So this is our fourth year, but before that I was leading a tahfidh program, the homeschool part of it, for 2 years. So that's, but I do consider my journey of leadership starting really from 2006.
MashaAllah. Excellent. Excellent. So let me ask you one more question before you mute again, Sister Asmat. If I had to ask you this, what's one word that describes you when you're at your best as a leader? What's one word that comes to your mind without thinking about it too much?
One word that describes me as a leader.
Yeah, when you're at your best as a leader.
I don't know, I'm modeling behavior, I guess, leading by example.
There you go. Excellent. So leading by example, mashallah. I'd like to ask everyone else, if you could, in the chat box, type what word comes to your mind when you think that you're at your best as a leader. I see we're now joined by Abdul Wahab. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa barakatuh.
Thanks for joining. All right, right now we just shared how long we've been working as leaders and where we are working as leaders. And right now everyone is typing in one word that describes them when they are at their best. While they're doing that, Abdul Wahab, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What's your role and position?
Okay, my name is Abdul Wahab Bashar. I am from Fort Wayne, Indiana. School principal. We started the school 3 years ago with it's the first Islamic school in the city. We started the school with 83 to 85 students, and this year we have 297.
MashaAllah.
We are thinking, inshallah, on about opening another branch in the same city, inshallah, next year.
MashaAllah, that's amazing. So thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to go here to the words that we've used to describe. I see Sister Nagina's efficient. So she's at her best when she's efficient. Sister Aisha is at her best when she's empathetic. Sister Rana, committed and caring. Awesome. So those are some of that would be described when you're at your absolute best. For me, it would be when I am inspired or motivated. Right? When I feel like there's something that I'm working for that's leading to something meaningful, I really am willing to put in tons and tons of hours without even really thinking about it, getting lost in that job. If I feel like what I'm doing is sort of just kind of running through the motions and just kind of managerial, you don't really get the best out of me. So thank you all for sharing that. So now we've got to know each other a little bit more. I'll tell you a little bit about myself very briefly. My name is William White. As I mentioned before, I'm a principal. This is my 6th year as principal in Islamic School of Louisville in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm also the vice president of CISNA, so I've been in the board for about 2.5 years. For leadership, I'm a certified master in the leadership challenge. There's different levels of certification that you can get. It took me around 2 years or so to achieve that. Really, that is something that involves really working with the authors, doing a unique project, which is something I can share with you. My unique contribution to the Leadership Challenge research was about how it connects to Islamic principles. So that's something I'm happy to share with anyone if you'd like to read more about that. Here's some pictures with me. The top one is at a Leadership Challenge Summit in Florida a couple years ago. That's Barry Posner, who's one of the authors. And Jim Kouzes in the bottom is when I met in Fort Worth, Texas. And I met both of them and worked with them in several places. More importantly, though, is the picture you can see sort of to the right, which is with my wife, who was from Egypt. I actually lived in Egypt for about 2.5 years, and also my son, Sufyan, and the one who's covering half his face. That's about the best picture you're going to get of him. His name is Hamza. They're a little bit bigger now than when that picture was taken. So I'm really passionate about this. I told you I experienced a workshop a couple of years ago. I was invited to it. I was skeptical, but as soon as I was about by lunchtime the first day, I said, all of this essentially what there's talking about with 30 plus years of research, 3 million participants, hundreds of studies, doctoral thesis, tons of stuff that's been done. It's really talking about what Islamic best practices are too. And that was my aha moment. And that's what really motivated me to really dive deep and to get the full certification so that I could share this with other Muslim educators. And I think that our communities are growing. I think there's already great current times for Islamic schools, but I think the future is even brighter. How do we get even better? It's by really working on ourselves first and foremost, and making sure that we're the best leaders that we can be, and so that we can help grow even more leaders to take these kind of schools, like what I'm hearing. We started with 80, we're now at 296, right? Why not 2,900, right? We can do that. We just have to work on the leadership in ourselves. The work here is, like I said, two authors, professors in California, started with about 30 years ago with a simple question, which is what makes one leader more effective than another? Why is this one organization more successful than another organization of similar size and resources? Before we dive into that, I want to ask you a question, get ourselves thinking about what we're talking about today. Leadership versus management. I'm going to show you a picture, and right here, we see two things, right? We see at the top and the bottom, right? Who would like to just tell me, what do you notice in the first picture? What do you see?
The boss is sitting up there while the rest are slaving.
Yeah, right. So he's maybe at most he's managing them, right? He's telling them, you pull this, get us to the mission. It's your job to do this. Who can unmute and tell me, what do you see in the bottom part of this picture?
It's not a boss, it's a leader, first of all, and that person is in the trenches with the rest of them.
Yeah. So you see the leader is not sitting in the chair, commanding people, telling them what to do, pull us along, you're not doing it. The leader is at the front of the line and is pointing the way. So they're actually doing what they're asking other people to do, right? This is a really good summary of what leadership is versus management. We're not talking about management today, right? And it's not that management's not important, right? But management really comes from the word manus, the Latin word for hand. It's really just about kind of managing those sort of things, managing enrollment, managing attendance. Those are important skills. We need people with management skills. But what we're going to be talking about, which is often lacking in organizations, is the actual leadership component, right? Which is really taking people to a new place, right? A place they haven't been before, having that vision, and then being willing to put that work in and modeling the way to inspire people to get that particular vision. There is a definition here at the beginning of the Leadership Challenge where the authors try to summarize what they have found leadership to mean. Is there someone here that can unmute and can read this definition for me? Sister Nagin?
Yes, the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations.
So that's their definition of leadership, the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for shared aspirations. Sister Nagin, what words stand out to you in this definition?
Struggle and shared also. And mobilizing probably.
Nice.
All of them, yeah.
Another one that often stands out with people is the art, right?
Yeah.
So art versus science. Art tends to imply that there's a little bit more to kind of modifying how we approach things. How you might lead with a certain group may vary depending upon who you're working with and what the circumstances are. Mobilizing, when I hear the word mobilize, I think about an army of bringing a bunch of people together, right, for a common cause. And then what I always found really fascinating is the idea of to want to struggle, right? To want to struggle. People actually enjoy struggling. It doesn't sound like they would. It sounds counterintuitive, but people will want to struggle not just for a mundane daily job, a task that's just pushing papers around. They're willing to struggle for something that is an aspiration that everyone shares. So these sort of common vision, something that we're all excited about, we're willing to work extra hard to do it. So there's a few things that the authors talk about before we go into some of what those behaviors and practices are. They call them the leadership fundamentals. So number one, the way the authors approach it is that leadership is everyone's business, right? Remember we talked about at the beginning, how many years have you been as a leader? A lot of times people will say 1 year, 2 years, and we're thinking about formal leadership positions, right? We're talking about leadership with a lowercase L versus leadership with a capital L. Capital L is principal, assistant principal, superintendent, etc. But leadership is really about behaviors. So leadership can be, if you have siblings when you were young, that's leadership, right? If they were following you, right? If you have or are a teacher, you can count that as leadership because you are leading who? A bunch of students, a bunch of young people that they're watching your every move, right? And they're paying attention to what you do more than what you actually say, right? Leadership is about relationships. It's not about sitting in the chair and saying, I'm the boss. When you have to remind people, I'm the boss, you have to do what I say, it's not a good sign, right? It's about having relationships with people, right? So that people feel inspired and motivated, and you know the person that you're dealing with, so you have that ability to kind of modify your approach and know what the best way to inspire that person to work. The best leaders are the best learners, right? You all are here modeling this particular behavior, right? No one has got it all figured out. No one is that I've mastered leadership, I'm good to go. Right? Leadership is about constantly learning, reflecting, seeing other ideas and incorporating those. And it takes practice, not just practice, but deliberate practice to become a better leader, right? Getting coached on that, receiving feedback, trying to improve constantly. The last definition that we're going to look at here is that's the one that I think also summarizes the research really well. Leadership is not for the anointed few. Leadership is not about personality, it's about behavior, an observable set of skills and abilities that can be learned. One of the things I've heard the authors discuss is this question of, are leaders born or are they made? And the response is, well, all leaders are born, ... Of course, everyone is born, right? It's a lot about, some people may have a more natural inclination, right, to go towards a leadership position. But the reality is that it's not just about your personality. I am loud, I am confident. That makes me a better leader than someone else. You can have very quiet, very reserved people, right, who are exhibiting specific behaviors that research shows are those that motivate people to want to struggle, right, for those shared aspirations. And the nice thing about this whole philosophy is that it's about behavior and it's something that we can control, right? I am a shy person. I am this. This is my personality, but the behavior is something that I can increase or decrease my frequency of. And that's what we'll be talking about, behaviors that the more we do, the research shows the more engaged the people that you work with are. And it's something that can be learned, practiced, and improved.
Can we talk about the concept of struggle? You know, I think as a society, people want to avoid struggle. And yet when we think about learning in itself, it's inherent that you struggle to learn. And, you know, taking on leadership positions, we accept that this is going to be the ultimate of struggle in so many ways. And in modeling that, we will want that. We're leading our teachers to also struggle and to see that in a positive sight, because, you know, nothing gets accomplished unless one goes through a struggle. And the beauty of it, though, is that when you have the breakthrough, you know, when you do really well with something as a result of that struggle, you feel good and it builds your confidence. So I think part of our job is to reframe that concept of struggle as not so much of a negative, but as a necessary step to get to the ultimate good. Do Posner and Kouzes ever address that specific aspect of struggle in their work, Brother William?
Yeah, they do. They talk about, if you look at the definition, it says to make people want to struggle, right? And they talk about the idea that people want to be challenged. They want to do things that are tough. They want to do things that are harder. They want to do something as long as that particular thing that they are doing or struggling with is linked to an aspiration that people share, right?
So that's the art. That's the art part, is getting them to be convinced that they want to struggle, is what I'm understanding.
And a lot of that comes from the leader or the leaders, right, in that building, right? Which is not just saying, we need to come to school, we need to do this test, we need to give them homework, we need to do this, but really connecting all of that, getting to know yourself, and that's what we'll talk about today, what your own values are and why you have those values, learning other people's values and what their vision is, and then tying all those things together. That's when you can get people who are willing to struggle to do things. And when they're willing to struggle, they actually feel satisfied. Why do people spend so many hours volunteering? Right? Why would someone stand outside in a soup kitchen, right, for the homeless? Why are they doing that? Right? It's because they find that what they're doing is meaningful and they would not want to get money for it. Right? They're doing it. It's not just a job. It's something that is much more meaningful. We want to enable, or we want to enact those types of thoughts and behaviors in people rather than just seeing what they're doing as a task that they're getting paid to do. It's a mission, it's a cause, and it's for a greater purpose. So great point. So if all this research, I'm going to summarize it in very simple kind of 5 practices. So the authors did a lot of research, right? And what they did is they asked people, right, tell us about your personal best leadership experience. When you do a full workshop, the leadership challenge, there's pre-work that's involved. And that is really you writing out a time where you felt that you were at your personal best as a leader. Right. So my best time I felt that I was a leader is when I first started at this new school and everything was, kind of a mess. But what I found is that I brought people together, I got to know people, etc. And they looked at thousands and thousands of these personal best stories. And they started to kind of chart out what are 5 or so themes that those leaders did whenever they had their personal best leadership experience. The first one that came out was modeling the way. Right? They had a vision, they had an idea, and they were the person who was in the bottom of the picture, pulling that rope and leading people rather than sitting on the top of the desk and telling people what to do. Right? They were inspiring a shared vision. They talked about what they're passionate about, and they made sure that they connected it to what other people were passionate about. That was what people were doing time and time again. They challenged the process. None of those stories that people write, in most cases, are not, my personal best leadership experience was everything was fine, everything was great, everyone was happy, there were no problems, we had tons of money, and everyone was successful. That was my best leadership experience. Because in most cases, that's not the way things really are, right? It's that there was disarray, there was fighting between people, there was community strife, there were financial deadlines that weren't being met. And then they came in, they challenged the process, they had people think differently, right? And started to really say, why are we doing what we're doing? They didn't do it alone, though, because the fourth one is that they enabled other people to act. They developed those relationships, right? They matched people with the right skills. They encouraged those people to challenge, to be independent, right? And to get that feedback. And then finally, because all of this is a struggle, it's not easy, right? They made sure that they were always encouraging the heart, right? Saying thank you to people, recognizing people for a job well done, right? Being creative in those recognitions. This is a summary of those 5 practices that they found. And this is backed up by a lot of research that they did after that to really test and see what exactly research shows that how these impact others. We'll move on now. We're going to start talking a little bit about some of these behaviors. We're going to do a really brief overview. The first one we have is modeling the way, right? Who could tell me what you see in this picture here and why do you think that that picture is there? Abdul Wahab, what do you think on this one?
Honestly, you need to think out of the box. You need to think bigger.
So this particular practice is model the way, right? And inside this picture, you see the fish, right? So it could be, we will talk about that. You see this fish is in a very visible bowl, right? Does this fish have anywhere it can go and not be seen?
No.
No, it's in full sight, right? And as leaders, that's really essentially what we are. As leaders, we're in fully there, right? Everyone's able to see and they're paying very close attention to what we're doing, right? Effective leaders, they have to clarify values. That's what we're going to start with. It's really an inner experience, finding out what their inner voice is, what they care about, right? And seeing what those shared values are in the group. And that number 2 is that they set the example by aligning their actions with shared values. For example, if I were to tell you that I, as a leader, value honesty above everything else, right? And people see that I'm honest. People see that I'm really telling the truth, even if it's something that goes against me. That would be an alignment. What happens if I tell everyone honesty is number 1, but then About that salary thing that we talked about last week. Yeah, we're not going to do that. It's going to be 5K less. Sorry, I never said that, right? All of a sudden there is an issue, right? That's not aligned. I'm telling you what my values are, but they're not in alignment. That's problematic. Number 2, inspiring a shared vision. You envision the future by imagining exciting and ennobling possibilities. Not only do you have a vision, it's just yours. Well, what's the second part here? What's the second practice that we see here? Is there someone who can read that one for me? Starts with enlist.
Enlisting others in a common vision by appealing to shared aspirations.
Excellent. So I have a vision, right? I envision the future, but I'm also enlisting others in that vision. I'm finding out what they're really passionate about and seeing what we have in common to create not just Brother William's vision, not Sister Nagin's vision, Brother Abdul Wahab's vision, but it's a shared vision, right? And a lot of times in Islamic schools, it's really easy to find shared aspirations, right? A lot of us aren't working in Islamic schools because of the sweet corporate benefits, right? It's not that, right? It's not the private car that we get to take home on the weekends, right? It's not the plush retirement package. It's we're working there because we're passionate about helping these kids, right? So you're going to find a lot of people who are really have these passions. If they don't, then that needs to be something that's addressed and trying to find how you can find that common vision together. So it's really that question. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, can I jump in here? Are we talking about just the team of staff members, or are we talking about sort of leading the community as well? So you have, parents who are already part of your school who are part of that, right? So you're still leading them, but then the struggle that I faced is this very one, right? Which is inspiring others to share the vision. And in our area, when we started, we're talking 4 years ago, actually 5 years ago is when we started talking about the project. There was a lot of resistance, and that resistance was people sitting on the fence, not sharing definitely the vision of the need for a secondary Islamic school. And people, they said, well, what's wrong with the public school system? It's great. We're in the Northern Virginia area. It's very affluent and so on and so forth. So I feel like this is probably more of a struggle in specific communities. And I see less of that in other communities. So I'm hearing the brother say that he started a school 3 years ago with 80 students. I mean, to me, that's a really big number. We started our school with 3 students, and we had a full year with all the, with everything that you'll have, a schedule, staffing, etc. And it was challenging. And this year, this is our 4th year, we have 53 students. I see that number as a huge growth, but I also see it as a struggle for me as a leader to have people share the vision. So can you elaborate a little bit about that? Are we talking specifically just good leadership leading the team of staff members and people who are already on board, or are we talking in general, even in the community?
Well, the question is a very good one, highly relevant, right? Is it just the people that you work with? It's the people you work with, of course. Is it just them though? No, right? It's really about leading and inspiring all of those that are stakeholders in your school, right? Who have something to do. Are you going to necessarily convince everyone? I'd like to give an example. Think about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, right? The time of Hijrah, right? When the Muslims were persecuted, right, in Mecca, and they went to Medina. How many Muslims were there that were leaving with him? Were there thousands of people who were going from Mecca to Medina for the Hijrah? Right? It's a very small number, right, of people that were actually there, right? It takes time, right? It's something that is developed over time. It's one of those things that there is struggle, right? And it's going to be whether you can't really compare your experience with just the others. It really depends. Each one is unique, right? But it sounds like you're making the progress on it. It's one of those things that when we do a full workshop, as we take a lot of time to actually work on developing our own vision, because a lot of times, and I will admit myself, that my vision was often hadn't really thought about my vision and how I could make it as inspiring as possible. I would speak more in platitudes, general terms. I would say, we want to help the community. We want to grow the Muslim youth. We want to. But a lot of times, developing an effective vision, it starts with really diving deep into yourself. We won't be doing that full experience today, but that's something that I have plenty of resources that either if you'd like to do a follow-up, if you'd like to do something in your community, we could talk about that, but I can also share some resources where you can also kind of dive into that yourself, because really a lot of this starts with ourselves, what we can control, all right, and we try to influence others through that. So that is hopefully, a way to kind of answer that question. It applies to everyone, but we start with ourselves, and that's what we're going to be looking at today, the building blocks of that, inshallah.
If I can contribute to that as well, our particular school, we went from preschool 3 all the way up through 12th grade. And as an assistant principal, I also was the academic counselor. So I had to write recommendation letters for colleges. And, one of the things that our school did is we emphasized to our community, look, through us, your children not only have, the Islamic education and Quran and Arabic, but truly this is a private school, which gives them the benefit that you have people that will truly get to know your child. And even though we had like 700 students at the time that I was there, we got to know these kids because they were with us oftentimes from KG all the way through 12. And we found that many of our children were able to get into the upper crust, if you would, the Ivy League schools. So that I think it really benefited and gave hope to our community that we had students that were going to University of Chicago, Northwestern University, Stanford, now Harvard, And so generally speaking, in the public school, they might not get that kind of attention or that kind of insight. When I would write these recommendation letters, I would even tell the students, pretend I'm your auntie. What are the things about you that your auntie knows about that I can put into my letter to help these people understand more about you? So our community, valuing those Ivy League education credentials, they really found that to be, bait is the word that comes to mind, but that was a hook that was able to get them on board with consistently re-enrolling their students in spite of great personal difficulty to pay that tuition. So I don't know how far your school goes up to, but that was, I think, something that we were able to find appealed to our community.
And these are the kind of conversations that what make these workshops really helpful, is that the more time you're able to spend together, it's really just talking about what our own personal challenges are, but also hearing from others where their successes are, how they've been able to do certain things, and then applying those as well. Briefly, we'll go over, we're going to do a breakout session here in just a few minutes, but I'm going to cover the remaining practices that we have here briefly, and then we're going to do a breakout quickly and reflect on where we think maybe we're our strongest is in one area that we'd like to work on. So the third one is challenging the process, right? Searching for opportunities by seizing the initiative and looking outward for innovative ways to improve, right? I don't know if any of you have ever heard the story about the Starbucks Frappuccino, but there's a story that the authors tell about there was one store, a Starbucks store, many years ago, because now the Frappuccino is a big thing, right? These kind of cold drinks. But once upon a time, everyone was serving just hot drinks. Right. And there was a manager in a store in the Starbucks who noticed that all of a sudden there was a huge drop in the number of people who were coming to the store one summer. And she started to ask people, she'd see them in the community and say, I haven't seen you in the store. You used to be a daily kind of person. What's going on? Why haven't you been coming? And they said, well, coffee shop down the road is offering this really nice iced drink. And, it's the summer and it's something I really like. And I can't decide, do I want a lemonade or do I want a coffee? Well, I get to choose there. That's why I'm not coming by. But when it gets colder, I'll come back to your store. Well, that manager could have shrugged her shoulders. We'll call her a leader. It's a better term. And said, you know what are you going to do? Right. I mean, we don't have it. I mean, they can get it somewhere else. Rather, she went and got her own blender, took her own initiative, right? She went to those stores that were selling that drink and started trying them herself. How's this taste? She tried to recreate her own, right? Saying, how can we make this drink at our store and maybe do a better job? She took the initiative by looking outside to see what other people were doing and started creating the drink, which later got pushed up the ladder, right? In the corporate levels where now the Frappuccino is selling and making Starbucks millions, I'm sure, of dollars of profit. And that's really by one initiative, right? Not just looking and saying, here's what we do, but what are other people doing, right? And that's the benefit of us talking together and sharing our experiences to see what may be working and how we can adopt those things and do them as well. The second one is about experimenting and taking risks by constantly generating small wins. Right? Making big chances. The woman in this story, she took a risk, right? Trying to push this up the ladder, trying to take her own initiative, right? But she tried over and over, slowly making it better, learning from that until she was successful. There's a really famous quote. You can share it with your kids if you don't already. All right. Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, he took him 10,000 tries to get it. Right. It wasn't, he's like, oh, I've got an idea. Poof, it was there. And the rest is history. He said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 things that do not work. Right. And his attitude was, they don't work yet. Right. He kept trying and getting closer and closer until the rest is history. Right. So enabling others is about relationships, fostering relationship collaboration by building trust, right, and strengthening others. So you're here strengthening yourself, but what can you do to also strengthen others, right, to develop their competence? Because the more competence people have with an inspired vision, working hard towards something is really where you can see a lot of results. And the last one that we have here, let's not forget, is going to be encouraging the heart. Right? Recognize contributions by showing appreciation for individual excellence. I promise that this workshop is not sponsored by Starbucks, but this is taken from a Starbucks sign. And you can see partner of the quarter is Richie, right? What's he like? He likes bananas, spooky season, the Jets, and Fortnite, right? We like his positivity, his contagious laugh, his top tier sass, and how he can make any shift fun, right? Did they say employee of the month? And just say, Richie, good job. Good job, buddy. Keep it up, right? What are they doing? They're recognizing people and it's personalized, right? How do you think Richie felt when he walked in the store and saw that, right? Wow, these people know me, right? They value me, right? They're telling me what they like about me and maybe what I should do more of, right? It's not just a high five and say, good, but we're personalizing it. And then finally, celebrating the values and victories by creating a spirit of community, right? We have lots of things to celebrate in our schools, right? And how can we create a sense of community out of that? Now, Sister Sue, what we're going to do now is we're going to do some breakout rooms. Let's see how many. We're all going to join these. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of us. So let's do a few groups. Let's have 2 groups of 2 and 1 group with 3, inshallah, to make us all together. And we're probably, I think Sister Sue is going to make it interesting. She's going to go with the random group, right? So we'll see who is grouped together. Now, while she's setting those up, what I'd like you to do is this. This is what we're going to discuss. Out of those 5 practices that we talked about, model the way, inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, and encouraging the heart. Which one of those do you think is your strength? Which one of those do you think that you do the best? Why? And then the second part of this would be, which of the 5 practices do you think is an area that you might need to grow in? Why? How do you think you might improve in that particular practice, right? For me, it turned out to be inspiring a shared vision is my strength, right? The area that I needed to work on was encouraging the heart. So everyone will take just a couple of minutes just to kind of share. We'll listen to each other. We'll see what we have in common. This is going to take about 5 minutes, and then we're all going to come back and share out what we learned about each other. And we'll move diving deeper into Model the Way after that, inshallah. You ready, Sister Sue? I think you're muted right now.
Thank you. I'm having, by the way, like an unstable internet, so I'm hanging with you in every bit of it, but just so you know, I'm actually just going to set up 3 rooms, 2 each, okay? And I'll be on the outside and maybe poking in, so we'll see.
Nothing. So we just had a conversation. I know that I just had a conversation that was really interesting with Sister Rana, and one thing that the 2 of us found in common was that both of us are really trying to be more conscientious about encouraging the heart, right? And Sister Rana mentioned she does it, but it's something that sometimes we find ourselves doing it in a certain way that we find is comfortable, and that sometimes we don't have the time to do it, right? And it's one of those things that with all the million things going on, it gets left behind. And so we talked about some strategies and some ideas for that. What about you all in your groups? Brother Abdul Wahab, so who are you in a group with?
Oh my God, I forgot the name. Sister, hold on. Is it Rana, correct?
I was with Sister Rana.
I don't think so.
Aisha, unless Sister Rana is very talented and she's able to duplicate herself. Sister Aisha, Sister Asma, Nagin, has to be one of them.
It was me, Aisha.
Sister Aisha.
Sister Aisha, I think it's what I found is like we shared the same thing about building relationship to face the challenges and be success in the end with our teams working together to achieve our goals. Because as an acting principal and going through the pandemic without the support that she has in the team, she said she wouldn't even make it. So to have a good relationship and have a good support team that share the same goals and the same mission, it would be so difficult to achieve your goals. That's what we found in common thing between us.
Excellent, excellent. So it sounds like you all had enabling others to act as one of those strengths, developing relationships, right? Having people work together. Excellent. So Sister Nagin, so I'm guessing you're with Sister Asma, is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Right. So what did you all find that was in common for your strengths and areas to work on?
Well, we both talked about how modeling was we both agreed on the modeling being a strength. I'm very inspired by Sister Asma's story with starting with 4 kids, and I mean our dream is to have a high school here in Little Rock. So we talked about wanting to, me wanting to pick her brain, but yeah, modeling, I was lead teacher. I'm a certified teacher in Arkansas. Like I have a lot of experience teaching. So, when it comes to the modeling part of like how we should conduct our classes, classroom management, all of those little things, it comes pretty easy to me. And we actually both talked about wanting to work on inspiring a shared vision within the community, all the stakeholders. Sister Asma mentioned having some, I guess, a challenge with convincing everyone that a high school is necessary in the community. So finding ways to kind of, maneuver around that or to, help that.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So it sounds like modeling is something that, you're inspired by your story, and modeling is something that you feel is a shared strength.
Yes.
Working on inspiring a shared vision. Yeah, I'm going to share with you just a little overview of the research and talk about maybe how you all are not the only one who would like to work on that particular one. We'll see what research says about those behaviors and how comfortable or how frequent people exhibit them. So what I'm going to talk about, we're not going to go through a full experience, but a big part of the leadership challenge is something called the LPI, which is the Leadership Practices Inventory. This is the research part of all of this that we're talking about. So what the leaders did is that the authors did is they came up with 30 specific behaviors, right? And they have people, and this is something that I have done. It's something that I can actually proctor for you. And it's what it is essentially an online assessment where you look at 30 behaviors and you say, for example, I say thank you for people for a job well done, right? I follow through on promises and commitments. Right. And you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 doesn't mean terrible and 10 means awesome. It's about frequency. How frequently do you engage in those behaviors? Right. So we'll talk about those behaviors. We have 5 practices, right? Those 5 that we talked about, each has 2 commitments. It gives us 10. And that for each practice, there are 6 specific behaviors for modeling the way, inspiring a shared vision, etc. That in the research is going to show that when you crank up the frequency for these, right, the engagement of those people who follow goes up. Let me give you an example. So this is an example of the engagement research that's in the Leadership Challenge in the 6th edition, which is the most current edition of the book out right now. Let's look at this. So there are millions of people who have taken the LPI. Not only do you as the individual self-assess yourself, but you ask for feedback from 8 to 10 different people. So you would ask for feedback from direct reports. So for example, if you're an assistant principal, from your teachers, right? From people in your admin team that report to you. You're going to ask for feedback from colleagues, maybe other principals that you've worked with in other organizations. You'd ask from your manager, maybe it's the board president or whomever. And you can also list others. So people who maybe work in volunteer organizations or have and watch you lead. You do all of this and you're going to get a report in the end, and it's going to tell you how often they see you feel that you are doing this, how often, and how the other groups of people see you of doing these particular behaviors. But what's really cool is how you could see that the more frequently you're doing these things, the more engaged the people are. If we look here at the bottom, this is one of those LPI behaviors. Leader challenges people to try out new and innovative ways to do their work. Okay. All right, so that's a challenge, the process behavior. Now let's look on the other axis. It says the percentage of reports who are willing to work hard. Remember, when people take this assessment, they rate your frequency, but they also talk about how engaged they are. How willing are you to work hard or put in extra hours at this particular position, right? And then they can correlate the two things together. So the percentage of the direct reports willing to work hard. How many of you want the people that you're working with to be willing to work hard? Sister Nagine's like, yeah, of course. Like, yeah, yeah, of course. We all want them to be able to be willing to work hard, not just because we're forcing them to. Let's look at what the research says. If the leader is found to almost never or rarely challenge people to try new ways to do their work, only 5% of millions of people in this database say that they're willing to work hard. So the leader, yeah, almost never, doesn't really do it. Just don't do things different. We do things by the book. This is the way things are done at the Islamic School of X, right? Research says 5% will be willing to work hard. Now, when that leader goes up to seldom or once in a while, they do sometimes, 12% say they're willing to work hard. Occasionally, 30%. Very often, 61%. Very frequently or almost always. What's the percent there? 94%.
You know what comes to my mind, Brother William, is as administrators, oftentimes we are working really hard, but we're in our office and we're working on reports and we're analyzing things in the school day. We may not be as visible. So there's, in my mind, a difference between being seen and being seen like I'm working hard versus being stuck in my office with so many things to do that I don't get in front of people as much as perhaps I wish to, because I'm burdened by all these other things. How do you negotiate that?
Wonderful point. Remember what I said in the beginning, this is not a scale of 1, meaning this person is terrible at this behavior, to 10 is awesome at it. It's how they are asked at the beginning, how often do you see Sister Nagin doing this? So the state would say, Sister Nagin challenges people to try out new and innovative ways to do their work. Yeah, she does sometimes. Yeah, I might put a 5, right? Oh, yeah, she's always talking about this. It's 10. What's really fascinating is that not everyone sees this. You could see very big differences in your LPI between one group or another. What about your board president who stops in Fridays after Salat al-Jum'ah, right, may say, 3, right? Whereas the teachers might say 10. And the question is, why is that? The people can only rate you based off what they see you doing. Right. So those questions, the LPI is amazing at getting this. Changed my perspective on leadership completely when I got this feedback. As I said, wow, some of these people see me doing this all the time. I think I'm doing it a lot. These people don't see it. Right. And what can I do to be more visible and intentional about these behaviors so that they would be more willing to work hard? Now I might know what may be causing some of these issues and have conversations with them and say, hey, thank you. Feedback is a gift. right? You told me that you didn't see me doing this very often. You don't feel that you were encouraged. I thought I was by doing the employee of the week or by, the high fives in the hallways, but tell me more. What would I need to do to make you feel more encouraged? Well, I would really appreciate this. It's developing those conversations so that you can get to know people, develop those relationships, and increase their engagement by getting that intentional feedback and practice. So thank you.
Out of curiosity, from the leaders that we have here, are people or staff members willing to tell you or give you honest feedback? I feel like from my end, staff members maybe, but then when we come to board members, I feel like it's a lot of sugarcoating or a lot of patting on the back, and I sometimes lack that honest conversation. I'm struggling with something, I go back to the board, and there's always this encouragement, no, you're doing the right thing. This was the right conversation to be had, and so on and so forth. And sometimes I feel like I need that brutal honesty. Is this just me, or is this something like across the board? Because I feel like this would be very beneficial if there's I don't know if you're going to give us access to something like this, where we take this and we can take it back to our staff or whoever around us to kind of rate us, because this would be very beneficial for me.
Yeah. And the feedback is all anonymous, by the way. So it encourages people to give you that feedback, right? The answer to your question, I don't know. I saw Sister Nagin, when you first started speaking, you said, do people give you honest feedback? And her eyes got big and she started shaking her head adamantly. Right. So maybe she's getting a lot of very honest feedback from people, right? Maybe teachers are very comfortable sharing, right? Board members, I get a lot of that, a lot of high fives, a lot of great job, Jazakallah khairan, brother. Yeah, Allah yatik al-afiyah, this kind of stuff, like the basic kind of stuff. But there could be different reasons for that. It could be because they don't really know, right? They can't really tell you anything specific because they're busy doing something else. Right. So it may vary. The LPI is something that offline afterwards, I can talk to you about how we could set one of those up. There is a cost to administer it. Like I have to buy a token for you to administer it. And then we talk about those details. It's not that expensive for what you get. And you could, I think for I have to check the prices again, $115. There's a way that you can do it twice. So you could do it once, and then you could do a follow-up again in 6 months and see if that feedback has changed based off of the strategies that you come up with. But, one of the things that I found very briefly before we move on that is very effective when I want to do this is, instead of if you're wanting to get feedback, let's say from a teacher or from a board member, if they're not used to giving you that feedback and you just say, hey, tell me how I'm doing. Is there anything I could do better? Right. Imagine I did that right now in this workshop. So Abdul Wahab, what's one thing I could do better? Abdul Wahab might be like, MashaAllah, ya akhi, it's great. Alhamdulillah. He doesn't really know me. It's kind of an awkward way to start. Right. But sometimes asking him more specific questions like, what, Abdul Wahab, I need your feedback on something. I got a lot of content to cover right now, right, and only have 1 hour left. Do you think it would be better if we do more group activities or we cut some of them out? Right. Now I'm giving him something much easier for him to give me feedback on, right? Because now he's like, well, I think the group activities are great, or you know what, I'd rather skip over those so I can get all the research in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, but sure. I definitely want, to be to partake in this, inshallah.
Definitely, inshallah. Yeah, we could talk about that. Anyone else? I'll send out an email after the session. I'll give you some details for anyone. If you want to follow up, I'd be happy to do that. So it's also really helpful if you can convince your board members and your other leadership team members to do this too, and everyone's joining together and having discussions together about what these behaviors are and what we're doing well as a group. There's actually called a group LPI report, which would say, as an organization, there's a lot of encouraging the heart going on here. There's not so much shared vision, right? So let's talk about as a group what we might be able to do to improve that. So there's a lot of reliability and validity to these. These are used, and the LPI is considered to be pretty much top tier in terms of leadership research and effective behavioral analysis for your leadership behaviors. It's been around, for 30 plus years. It's constantly updated and revised. And really, it's correlated with this: leadership credibility, commitment, teamwork, productivity, performance, reduced turnover and absenteeism, right? The more you're able to just find out where you're really doing well, according to others, because that matters, right? And then making a plan to increase it increases these things. So these are the kind of scale I looked at. What we're going to do is just a little bit, just a small little flavor of it, of what some of those behaviors are when we talk about model the way. So we've got about an hour left. So we're going to do just a part of the model the way workshop. I see that Sister Sophia has kind of joined in. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Sophia. MashaAllah, Sister Sophia. Sister Sophia is well versed in this. Sister Sophia and I have had the pleasure of co-facilitating these workshops together as a team. So we've done it in Chicago for the ISNA Ed Forum when those things still happened in person. We've had the pleasure of visiting schools and doing workshops with leadership teams and teachers and board members. So she's a great resource to have along. Thank you so much for joining, Sister Sophia. Feel free to chime in on anything with your wisdom as well.
I just wanted to mention that I've had some phone calls this morning from people who are trying to register at the last minute, and some who weren't able to join, but did register, but they're looking forward to joining you in the future and hoping to just listen to the recording for now.
Sure.
We have about 5 other people at least that will be joining us in the future, if not even coming in still in the session. So inshallah, this is being recorded. And so you will all get like a link once I get this edited a little bit so that you can access it on a private list.
Alhamdulillah. Great. So we're going to go back to model the way. We did an overview of the 5 practices. We got a little idea of what the research looks like. Now we're going to focus just on modeling. We talked about the fish in the bowl and how so many of us are that fish in the bowl. We're not just the fish in the bowl for our teachers, but I think we can all agree that we're the fish in the bowl with our kids too, right? How many of you have had a problem where you tell your kids to do something and they say, that's not what you do, right? And then my example with this, my personal story is that I used to have conversations all the time. I did my leadership workshop and I talked about my 5 values, which you will do inshallah shortly. And I talked about being honest as one of them. And we talk about talking to your family and your friends about your values, and sharing those values is a powerful experience. And I told my kids and my wife, we're going to focus on honesty. That's something that is our family value. Well, one day I have 2 children. You saw the 2 children, and the oldest one, I had promised that we were going to go out and go on a bike ride together. He had been waiting for a long time. The younger brother, we are trying to sneak out of the house 7 o'clock in the morning. He's going to be asleep. He won't know. So we're sneaking out of the house. And as we're about to close the door, little Hamza walks into the room. Hey, where are you going? I look at my son. He looks at me. My son says, oh, Hamza, we're about to go to the doctor. It's like Sunday, it's 6 in the morning. He's like, we're going to the doctor. And the doctor's office has these needles that are about this long, and they give a big old shot in your arm if you come along with us. You're not going to enjoy it. Hamza starts backing up slowly. No, I'm out of this. I'm going to go back to bed. Right? Son looks at me, winks. We got him. We walk out the door. And I looked at my son and I said, you know what, buddy? I know you didn't want him to come with you. And I know that was a great way to get him to not want to come. But was that being honest? Is that what we talked about? He looks at me, he looks at the floor, and talk about honest feedback. He looks me right in the eye and he says, well, Baba, you know why I did that? Because you and Mama do it all the time. Right? What are you supposed to say? Especially when you know that's true, right? Isma karami, right? As they said when I learned in Egypt, listen to what I say. Don't talk back to me. I'm the boss. It's different. It's not, right? Because people pay attention to what you do, and it's not what you say. But if you can make 2 of those things line up together, that's when your credibility is going to go up and more people are going to be willing to follow. So I had to have a little realization to say, you know what, you're right. Even those little white lies, those little stories we tell you about where we're going to the doctor's office when we're really trying to get away from you and get coffee for a little bit because we need a break, we need to be honest about it, right? And that is something that really came home with me. So our leadership is not just with our students, not just with our teachers, it's with our families, it's with everyone that we deal with, that we lead. So we're going to talk about some of those behaviors really quickly. So remember I said there are 6 behaviors for each of those 5 practices. We're not going to talk about all of them, but we'll look at a few of them that I think are essential for our conversation right now. So if you're taking the LPI, one of the first things you're going to see is I set a personal example of what I expect of others. Whoa. Well, you have to be honest, right? If we're just like 10, 10, 10, 10, may not be super honest, right? Almost always, I'd put a 10. If I think it's usually, I'd put an 8. If I think it's almost never, I'd put a 1, right? So what do I think? How often do I set a personal example of what I expect of others? Number 2, another behavior. I follow through on the promises and commitments that I make. Right? How often do we say, yeah, inshallah? How often do we become, how many of you have seen this with your kids? Well, my 3-year-old, when he was 3, I used to say, inshallah, ya Hamza, inshallah. And he'd say, no, say yes. Why did he say that? Why does he say that? Why is he not accepting inshallah from me?
Because inshallah means no.
This is the Muslim way of a polite, I don't want to say no, but I'm going to say inshallah. We get skilled as adults in reading the non-committal inshallah versus the inshallah. Yeah, we're going to get it done. All right. So how often do I follow through on those promises and commitments with my friends, my family, with the teachers that I work with the other leaders that I work with? And I am clear about my philosophy of leadership. What is my philosophy of leadership? Right? And these are the sort of questions that make us have to reflect and think, right? And see what other people say. And then from there, develop a plan so that we can improve it. And there are plenty of activities and strategies to work on these things. What I want you to do right now, take out a piece of paper, right? Take out anything you have. I want you to write down those 3 behaviors. And I want you to put a number next to it that you honestly think would be an accurate reflection for yourself. So I'm clear about my philosophy of leadership. Sometimes, right? I might put a 6, right? Just be honest. Go ahead and just take now the next minute or so, write down those 3 and then put your frequency next to it. While we're doing that, Sister Sue, I think I'm going to go past the breakout room on this one so that we have enough time to do the values activity. So I might just do this one as a whole group, inshallah. All right, we'll take about 10 seconds or so. Go with your gut, right? What do you think is, what comes to your mind? For Abdul Wahab, the question is, we are looking at those 3 behavioral statements, and we are going to write down the frequency from a scale of 1 to 10, which is written at the bottom, from 1 being almost never to 10. How often do you rate yourself, right? Do you think that you do each of these 3 behaviors? What we're going to do now, just quickly, so that we can go to the next activity, I'd like to hear from anyone who's a volunteer who would like to share which of these 3 do you think is the strength, the one that you feel that you do most frequently? Is it setting a personal example? Is it follow through? Or is it being clear about your own philosophy of leadership? Feel free to just go ahead and unmute and share.
I follow through on the promises and commitments I make. I gave myself a 9 on that one.
Cool. Okay. So you think very frequently, right? That you do that. Notice that 10 doesn't say always. It says almost always. right? So good, 9. So that would be your strength. What else? I saw Sister Rana. I saw that you unmuted. Would you like to share?
Yes, and I do. I think I will give myself 9 on the first one. As I try not to ask my staff to do something if I'm not doing it. So I set a clear example first. And I think that the first 2 are, this is where my strength is.
Excellent. Excellent. Who else would like to share? Sister Aisha?
So I would say I set a personal example of what I expect. So that I would say I do consistently. And I'm trying to be very meaningful about the second one, and I'm working really hard in making good progress there, following through on promises and commitments that I make. I also write it down. And so I check off when I actually do it. So this is a reminder for me, because I think this is really important. You know, when you're a leader and your staff is really watching this. And then clear about my philosophy of leadership. I would say more a 7, but that's something, you know, that I'm working on. I think for me, you know, it's more of like reminding myself clearly every day before I come to school, you know, about what my purpose is, and then all the things I, you know, have to get through the day, and sort of, you know, getting in the right frame of mind.
Excellent. Excellent. So I'm hearing you setting a personal example, following through fairly often, but it's something that you might increase moving forward. Okay. Sister Esma, would you like to share the one that you feel is your strength?
For me, setting a personal example, I want to say between an 8 and a 9. It's really hard to judge myself on that. I'd like to think that I'm a 9, but then, you know, that would mean a lot more than what I think of myself. But in terms of following through promises, I think in the all around, whether in personal or professional, I think this is a strength that I have. Or if I commit to something, I do it, and maybe I commit to too much, but I still, you know, pressure myself to do it. You know, taking this course is, you know, prime example. And then the last one about my philosophy and leadership, I think it varies with different positions and with different situations. Sometimes I have a very clear understanding of what I need to do as a leader, and sometimes I'm at a loss, especially with certain behavior issues with teenagers at the school, and I feel like maybe compassion should work better, and then you realize that didn't work, so you reevaluate that you know, so on. So that fluctuates really with different situations. So that needs a lot of development, I think, from my end.
Excellent. Thank you. You all being very honest and open, and these are the exact kind of conversations that really stimulate our thinking and help each other, right, grow. So yeah, I'm hearing what it seems to be the consistent theme is that follow through and personal example are the strengths, and that philosophy of leadership is something that needs to be worked on. We're going to work now. We're going to transition to the building blocks of that, right, about what the philosophy of leadership is. I hinted at something else though earlier. Remember when I said that having a shared vision was one of those things that maybe many people have to work on? You guys remember the 5 practices? The one that is the consistently lowest rated for people is inspiring a shared vision, right? And it's a lot of times that we do a lot of the other aspects. We encourage, we do teamwork, but it's oftentimes what that shared vision is something that takes time to develop. And part of those, what we're going to talk about are the steps that we take to get there. We won't get there all the way today in this short session we have, but we're going to talk about values, what your values are. From that, it's the developing that basic idea of what your philosophy is, and then how that can go into a personalized vision. So thank you all for sharing that. And it makes for a good segue into the next part that we're going to talk about. We talked about what we had in common, which is really helpful. One thing that we're going to do before we do that, though, I'd like, it's totally worth the time for us to stop here for this. Does anyone know how to use the annotate feature on Zoom? You should have an option. It looks like a little annotate. It's like a pin, right? That's at the very top. And when you click on it, right, you could see that you get different stamps that you can choose from. And you could find a little heart or any other. So if you go to the top bar or the bottom bar, depends on, for me, I'm sharing my screen, so it looks a little different. So find where you can see annotate, right? And then go to stamp. And then you could find one of those little symbols. So there's hearts, there's a star, there's an arrow, check, and X. Is there anyone who's having trouble finding that?
I cannot find it on mine.
Yeah. So do you have the option? Can you describe what you see? Do you have a bar at the bottom of your screen? Or at the top?
Bottom.
You go to the very top.
Yeah, it says chat, meeting setting, and all of that underneath. That's the first one on the, when I pressed on more, I see on the bottom, there is the hand raise. Let's see if I can see all the smileys, but that's it.
Okay.
On mine at the top, it says you are viewing William White's screen, and next to that, it says view options. That's where I found annotate as one of those options.
Is it to the right?
At the top of my screen. I'm on a laptop though. I don't know if it's that way on a cell phone.
Yeah. So if you can't find it, no problem. You could type in the chat box, type in of this list. These are questions. It says leaders you would willingly follow. They've asked this question to thousands and thousands of people and asked them, what are the characteristics? Choose, right? 7 characteristics of a leader that you would willingly follow. What's the difference? The key word here is willingly. You're not following them just because they're the boss and mudir, right? And basha, whatever it might be, right? You are following them because you want to. So select 7 of those. You can put a little heart next to it or a star or a check mark. It doesn't matter. And we're going to see what we have. We're just going to take the next, say about 2 minutes, right? To check those. And then I'm going to show you what the research says. All right, Sister Esma, it looks like you've had a chance. I see the thumbs up.
I'm not sure. Are you seeing what I'm choosing? I don't see it being there.
I'm not sure. I see some check marks and some hearts. I'm not sure which ones is whose.
No, that's not me because.
All right. Well, we will see what we got in there. So I see Sister, and I see Aisha is going in there. Let's go ahead and see what we have in here so far. So we see a decent number of symbols next to the word competent. We see next to, what else do we see, Sister Sue here? My screen was sharing and stuff is kind of blocked. Let's see.
I just also sent you a private chat because we have added another student to our group. So,
okay. Are they online with us right now?
Yes, Sister Afreen Juveria has just joined us.
Welcome,
Sister Afreen. Okay.
Well, we're looking at the characteristics of leaders that you would willingly follow. So we see a decent number of competent, courageous, dependable, and then a pretty good mixture of the others. I'm going to go ahead and move over to the next so that you could see what the research is. I'm going to go ahead and
competent is the most, because I think everybody just wants to know that they're in good hands going on these journeys.
Yeah. So I'm going to clear all the drawings right now, and so that I can move to, oops, and then I'm going to put a star on. Oops, let me fix that too. Let's see, clear all drawings, and then I'm going to close that, and I'm going to move over to the next screen. Notice what we just found. I just went to the next one, which shows you what research shows time and time again, what the 4 top values are that people are looking for. We have honest, competent, inspiring, and forward thinking, right? There is in the 6th edition of the Leadership Challenge, you can see it's really fascinating. They have research done internationally, so they can actually show you the 4 values in China, Dubai, Turkey, in Great Britain, United States, Canada. It's really broken down, and you can see some cultures these vary a little bit from. Okay, sometimes when you do specific groups, if you're doing, for example, a group of nurses, caring tends to be one of those really common ones, right? If you're dealing with a bunch of college professors, which one do you think may come up? Which one do you think? Yeah, CISNA game, you just said intelligent, is that right? Lip reading, it's good, I got it. Yeah, intelligent, you're right. Yeah, it depends. But when you look at overall, all of the samples, time and time again, mixtures of thousands and hundreds of thousands of different people, it's honest, inspiring, right? Competent and forward-looking. Unfortunately, and maybe it doesn't surprise you, honesty has been slipping a little bit in the recent years, right? Maybe not a big surprise to us, right? A lot of things are going on with fake news and other things, but it still remains consistently for 35 years. You're seeing this to be the top characteristic, honesty, right?
Is this,
really,
sorry to jump in, is this something that we see in terms of research as the also dropping in Islamic leadership, or is this just worldwide?
This is worldwide. Yeah, okay. Worldwide.
Okay, so what about from Islamic leadership, let's say here in America? Is there any research that suggests that one of these 4 is lacking more than the others?
So I don't think that the data is broken down into that, but actually it's really interesting. The more Muslim educators that we can get to do the LPI, the more you can actually, I can ask the author, Dr. Posner, he's the data nerd, he's the one that runs all the numbers. He can actually disaggregate the data by professions, different organizations, and all sorts of stuff. We would have to, my mission in life, my inspired vision really is to share this sort of research and philosophy about leadership and connecting it to Islamic practices. And we've had a decent number. The more Muslims that we can get to do this, this is actually something that I could ask that question. Can you go into the database and look at seeing what the kind of research is showing for these specific groups? For Muslim countries predominantly though, this honesty is still saying high, right? I'm not sure if it's slipped as much. I know internationally that the honesty has gone down a bit, right? How would it look at Islamic schools? It's a great question, right? I mean, you may say that it's probably a reflection of society in general, but it's hard to say without looking at the specific numbers. But these 4 characteristics, right? They call it characteristics of an admired leader: honest, competent, inspiring, forward-looking, right? Think about the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What was his nickname even before the revelation? Wahi. What was it? It's 2 words in Arabic. Anyone know?
As-Sadiq al-Amin.
As-Sadiq al-Amin, right? Which means what? The most what? The most honest, the most trustworthy?
Honest, trustworthy, yeah.
Yeah, most honest, the most trustworthy. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, honesty, number 1, right? So there's plenty about hadith too, right? Honesty leads to goodness and goodness leads to paradise, right? So honesty, number 1, right? Competence, right? Inspiring, right? Forward-looking. I think you could say all of these things about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, right? Were huge aspects of what made him a successful leader. In fact, there's a research, and the name of the author is slipping my mind, but the book was called The Top 100 Leaders, something along those specs. It's actually a Jewish author. And he did research on who he thought historically were the most effective leaders of all time. Sister Sue, do you know the name of that author?
Is that Martin Lings?
Yes.
Martin Lings?
Yes. So in his research, he found
Michael Hart, right? Michael Hart is the one who did it.
You're right.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So Martin Lings is actually a Muslim, I think. I'd have to check. But in this particular research, he came back with all of these things and came back with saying, I know it won't be popular, but I have found in all my research to be the number 1 most effective leader throughout history was the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. right? And why? Because there was no person, right, who had more of an impact on the religious, spiritual, economic, social, every single aspect of life was changed, right? Because of, right, Islam, because of the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is a non-Muslim seeing this here. If you look at, the Quran, right? If you look at this verse, right, there has certainly been for you and the messenger of Allah an excellent pattern, right? For anyone whose hope is in Allah in the last day and remembers Allah often, right? Talking about having an example, right? So this is really connecting that to the Islamic aspect as well. What does it look like if we want to see some of the research when it comes to some of these ideas too? I mean, you've seen honesty, you've seen the competence, right? I would say competence is a huge thing that people are looking for, right? To be seen as competent, you have to be someone who knows what they're doing, who follows through on things. Here's a little bit more of that research. Management is trusted. How many of us want to feel that management is trusted? Sister Sue, do you think this is important? Not so much if people think that you're a trusted person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So look, almost never, seldom, occasionally, fairly often, very frequently. These behaviors, these characteristics have a huge impact. All right. The first law of leadership is if you don't believe in the messenger, you won't believe in the message. Right. I think we know about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's example. His character was beyond approach. Right. No one really, even those who were enemies of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, when asked of others to describe to me his character, right, they would often say, well, is he dishonest? No, he is honest. Right. Is he a straightforward person? Yes. Right. So this is a huge aspect of what we are doing. I want to move us over now to the let's move past this one. And I want to make sure that we have enough time to do this activity, which is huge, right? I think this may be one of the most for inward looking sort of activities that we could do today that really may stimulate your thinking moving forward for when we leave, and hopefully, inshallah, we can find a time to reconnect, which is going to be talking about what your own values are. So clarifying those values. So in order for you to have a philosophy of leadership, you have to first stop and say, wait, what is my philosophy? What do I care about, right? And remember, we can't care about every single thing, right? And then exemplify every single thing. We have to really boil it down to what we think is most important. What are those actions, those things we care about that people are going to see in our day-to-day lives? What everyone needs right now is a pencil or a pen and any sheet of paper. Nice and simple. We'll go old school, low tech for you, right? You can use crayons if that's what you have. It doesn't matter. You just need something to write with. Now, we're going to talk about a values activity. When we're in person or when we do the full workshop, you have some values cards that you can actually sort into different stacks. But what we're going to do right now is I'm going to show you values, about 30 different values, 30 to 40 different values that are going to pop up on the screen. Now, any of these values that you think are important to you, that you think, yes, it resonates, it touches something in your heart, that, yes, that's me. That is what I really care about. I want you to write it down. Okay? If you see the word and you're like, not really, skip it. Okay? So we're going to try to write down just those that you think really resonate with you that are super important to you. Ready to go? All right. So personal values exploration. Now, what really matters to me? What do I really care about? First one is harmony. Second, effectiveness. Challenge. Freedom. Decisiveness. Health. Simplicity. Discipline. beauty, courage, achievement or success, empathy, honesty or integrity, family, diversity, communication, wisdom, autonomy, growth, happiness, hope, dependability, truth, flexibility, productivity, humor, recognition, friendship, risk-taking, spirituality or faith, curiosity, independence, strength, creativity, variety, security, competition, power, innovation, teamwork, love or affection, competence, respect, loyalty, open-mindedness, patience, intelligence. We're almost there. service, trust, prosperity or wealth, quality, equality, and that's the end of the list. I give you a second if you wanted to put a wild card in there, if you needed one extra that wasn't there, because it's impossible to have every value on a list, but that gave you a variety of them.
Can't we just say all the above?
Have you heard of Brene Brown?
Yeah.
Anyone familiar with Brene Brown? She's amazing. She has a values activity it's common in a lot of leadership programs. And there's a quote that I'll never forget reading her book. She said, if you care about everything, right, then you care about nothing. Right. And it's like, what does that mean? No, that's impossible. Well, oh, I see. Right. Because if everything is important, I think the quote is, if everything is important, then nothing is important. Right. So
pick and choose then.
Well, there's going to be, think about what we're talking about here. These two commitments is that you have clear values and that you align your actions with those values. Right. And I think if you think and reflect long and hard enough on it, you could boil that down to a smaller list of those core values that are important to you. Once again, we're not saying, are any of these things important in life? No, it's all important. But what's the most important to you that drives you, right, every day?
I think this changes day by day in a sense. It's like I have got like 20 things on my to-do list, but what I have a discipline of doing is the night before I sleep, I will choose what are those 3 must-do things that are going to move the bar forward, because everybody's busy. There's no shortage of being busy, but what are those 3 must-dos so that I see some progress in what's going on in life? So this is, I think, what you're really asking us to do, is to distill of all of these wonderful qualities, these things to value, what are going to be our top few?
Yeah, and exactly. Well, yes, the values can change, but the most important thing is that the most important is to think about what are those things, the values that drive your actions. Like for you, as if I were describing Sister Sue and I had to say, what are the 5 things that come to mind about Sister Sue, right? And I could say, really, it would be things that I see her talking about and I see her doing time and time again, right? So those are the things that we're talking about. It's not necessarily just the actions that we're doing, because I have a to-do list as well, right? But it's also thinking about what are those core principles that really motivate and drive you. So I'd like you to do right now, here's the super challenge. I'd like you to cross it down until you have 5. 5 left. 5. Not 55 or 25, 5. And go with your gut.
I hope I'm not wrong. I put it in the chat.
Go right ahead. That's great. Yeah. If you'd like to include yours in the chat too, that would be awesome. I see Sister Rana shared honesty, wisdom, spirituality, flexibility, and achievement. She narrowed it down. I'm sure there were others on those lists that she wanted to include. She narrowed it down to 5. I'm not going to do it to you, but I've done workshops before where we say narrow it down to 3, narrow it down to 1, right? And that's really tough. We'll do 5 today.
Sometimes one of these characteristics just like can include everything else underneath.
I've heard that argument before too, and we're going to talk about that in a second. We're going to talk about what that means to you, because honesty to me has maybe a different meaning. Spirituality is very broad, right? You could argue spirituality encompasses everything else, honesty, right? Service, right? Let's see, Sister Asma has put competence, discipline, risk-taking, integrity, and faith. Excellent. There are no wrong answers here. None. The only wrong answer would be you putting something that you think just sounds good and it's not something that really matters to you. All right.
Can I ask something that you just mentioned?
Sure.
You just mentioned that values can change. I tend to think of values as something that is more static and you can grow on them, but I tend to think of values as a building block of anything that we do.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate a little bit? What did you mean?
Well, let's think about it this way. So you had a list, and let's say that you had 10 in the beginning, right? And you narrowed it down to 5, right? Those are the 5 that are really important to you right now. You're doing this activity in the moment. Values should not be something that are shifting from day to day. That can be a little bit difficult, right, for people to follow and for you to implement. And once again, these are values, the things that you really care about. But let's say that you're at a point in your life that maybe you are younger, you're in your 20s, right? And you're just starting off working. You may have not put family down, right, as one of those values. But to fast forward 10 years later and your life has shifted a little bit, right? And you've really had to realize that you need to spend more time with your family, or you maybe have kids now, or maybe your parents need extra help. Then maybe family may show up on your list, right? And so maybe that sort of accomplishment or achievement may be shifting out a little bit. So they do change, they can shift over time based off different periods in your life. But they really shouldn't be something that's a daily shift. They tend to be more static than that, but they can change based off the circumstances that you're faced with. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Sure. So we've got those 5 down. Excellent. Now, next step is hopefully you have those 5, right? Sister Nagin, your eyes got really wide when I said 5. You're like, no, really? So now you have 5. You good? Got them? Okay. So what I'm going to ask you to do is, let's say that you had, let's use an example here. Look at the chat. We see 5 from Sister Afreen. So yes, difficult to narrow down, but you got them. So family, harmony, freedom, achievement, and autonomy. What I'd like you to do is to write each of those. So let's say you have a list. It just says family, harmony, freedom, achievement, autonomy. Write a short definition, punchy to the point, about what each of those means to you, right? So for example, if I were to put creativity, I would say to be inventive and original, right? If I say honesty, I would say to say the truth, no matter what the consequences may be, right? That's my own definition of what honesty is, okay? That's not yours. So you take a second now, and we'll take just the next 2 or 3 minutes and write down on your list next to the word what your own personal definition is for each of those. It's not something you can look up on Google or you can look up in the dictionary, because they don't have your own personal meaning here. Okay, we'll take about 1 more minute. 10 more seconds. While you are wrapping up, Sister Asma, mashallah, has typed in her definitions. Is it okay, Sister Asma, I share that, read that out?
Yeah, of course, sure.
Would you be okay with reading those since they're yours?
Sure, let me go to the chat. So competence to me is really important, and that basically means having the skills to do something. Discipline, holding yourself from overreacting to something. Risk-taking, doing what others are not willing to do. Integrity, being self-conscious. And faith, having God consciousness and hope.
Wow, very good. I think that seeing that those fluid just kind of came out naturally, right? You're able to come up with those definitions really quickly, which is good, right? And they're powerful and they're short, and it gives me a really clear idea of who you are. Amazing. I see some others. I see Sister Aisha wrote honesty, being clear and truthful. Excellent. So really the whole process here is what you're working on, from values to a vision, right? We're not going to vision right now. That's something, inshallah, maybe we could explore later. But personal values are all about who you are. You have to know that first, right? After that, it's starting to talk about what you believe in, which is talking about a leadership philosophy, right? I'll show you an example of those, maybe something you can work on offline since our time is limited. And that eventually leads to a vision. If we look here, here's an example of an actual participant that was included in the book in a workshop and did this activity where came up with what their personal leadership philosophy was based off those values. I'm going to read this and I want you to tell me what values you think that Chris was talking about. I believe in being a conduit of greatness for those that I care about personally and professionally. I believe that my most significant accomplishment is to make others around me great, and I believe that my most significant action is yet to come. I believe in treating others the way that I would like to be treated. I believe it is okay to be frustrated as long as you love more, and I believe that laughter is, in fact, the best medicine, right? Leadership is all about who are you? Right? When there's an activity that you do in a full workshop where you say, imagine that a random leader just comes in the room. What questions do you have? In groups, right? Statistically, often categorize those questions into first question, who are you? And not just my name's Chris. How are you? I have a master's in such and such. But who are you? Like, what do you care about? Can you imagine Chris walking into the room and saying, hi, my name is Chris. Like, this is what I'm all about, right? What are some of the values that you see in Chris right here? What do you see?
The last one of humor.
Humor, yeah, that's a good one. What else?
Love.
Love, excellent. What else?
Empathy.
Fairness.
Sorry, what was it? Fairness?
Yeah.
Fairness, very good. Abdul Wahab?
A team builder.
Team builder, excellent, excellent. He feels that, he says being a conduit of greatness, right? Does to make other people great. Any other values that you see?
Respect.
Respect, excellent. All right, respect. Empathy. So you see how those values came out of this? So like he's taking the values, he's building that leadership philosophy, what you believe. One thing that you can do to practice this, take those 5 statements that you have, write out using I believe, right? So I saw some examples, right, that you guys posted in the chat, right? MashaAllah, I see, like, for example, Sister Rana has mentioned flexibility, right, is a must to be able to serve everyone. Achievement, I feel achieved by not giving up, doing my best, right? Turning that into what you believe in, right? You guys have already started it in those definitions, right? Think how you could do this as well, right? And then think about how you could share that with other people. Start with your family, your friends. Tell them what you believe. After today's workshop, go to your husband, wife, whomever you feel comfortable with, a best friend, and say, hey, I just talked about my values, and here's kind of what I came up with, right? Do you see this in me? Does this sound like me? Right? Is this authentic? See what kind of feedback you get, right? That might give you the courage to start sharing that more often with other people. So you guys can do this offline as a great activity because we're a little limited in time. We're kind of moving it to 2 hours, but we'll abbreviate that part, something you can do to practice. Now, This is something you can share with someone offline, see what you have, ask them to do a similar activity. You can walk them through it, right? To choose some values. But the last point that I want to make before we leave is this quote. Author Tom Peters, very famous from the 1980s, right? A mentor to the authors Kouzes and Posner. I worked with them. Is you are your calendar. What's that mean? You are your calendar. Who could tell me? What comes to your mind? You are your calendar. I'm not my calendar. I'm me. I'm William. My name's not calendar.
If you want to do it, you better put it in the calendar, because once it's in the calendar, it's like gold.
Yeah. If you take a look at this, I have this. Let me show you. Here's like an example of my to-do list from last week as a principal. Do you guys see that? Right? All sorts of things in there, right? Talk about the new students with Miss Stacy, observe this teacher, parent meeting here, right? So you are your calendar is, remember when I talked about my son and what I said that was important, right? Imagine that you say that one of your values was family, okay? If I opened your planner, and assuming that you wrote everything that you do in your planner, would I see something scheduled in there for family? Right? Imagine it was growth was one of those values that you talked about. For me, growth is super important. If I flip back in the past month or 6 months or year in your calendar, how many activities where I'd actually see you are doing something that is investing in your own growth, right? It's one of those things to really think about and to reflect on, right? It's one of those things that you have to connect. If we want to really be effective and be credible as leaders, remember, don't do what I did with my son. Don't tell people this is what you're all about and then have some sort of conflict in there with it. We are human beings. Is it going to happen? Yeah. Are we going to follow through on every single thing? No, right? But it's really a process of always striving to do better, to be aware, and to be open to that sort of feedback that you can get. That's how we become better leaders. And when other people around us see us striving to improve and to be humble, right? The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Man tawada'a lillahi rafa'a." Right? Whoever is humble for the sake of Allah, Allah will do what with him? What's this action? Rafa, right? Will raise him up, right? So the more that we can be humble and try to grow, alhamdulillah, you guys have done that, exemplified that in the 2 hours that we've been here. You've been very open, right? And I hopefully this experience is the beginning of something that you can use to kind of start to reflect more on our own behaviors and talk about how we can grow as well. So these things are all really relevant, right, to us as Muslim leaders. You hopefully could see some of the Islamic concepts intertwined in there. And it's really important that we can develop ourselves and we can also develop others. One of the things that you can do as well, what's really cool about this is that there's also something called can you guys read the book? Sorry, trying to get a good view. What does that say?
Student Leadership Challenge.
Student Leadership Challenge. So it's not just for adults. There's actually, the authors have developed and implemented a student leadership version of this. I have done those with youth in my community here in Kentucky. You bring together high schoolers, you can bring together college students, even some more mature middle schoolers, and you can actually do LPIs with them, right? And all of this is kind of simplified in their language. There's a book that is, what's amazing about the Leadership Challenge, that even the adult version, the book is very easy to read. It's stories, it's examples of people. What's awesome about the Leadership Challenge is the authors refuse to use stories of Steve Jobs when he was right? They don't use those stories. They only use stories of everyday normal people, right? HR manager, small firm in Arkansas, right? That's someone that you can connect with. And there are student stories there too. And there are actual activities and exercises our students can do as well, right? And that's what we really need to work on. What I'd recommend for you is kind of next steps to think about would be checking out the book, The Leadership Challenge, right? It's a book you can find in the library. You can find it on Amazon, right? Get it, read it, reflect on it, see if there's other lessons that you can pull. There's a lot more information in there that we could fit in the 2 hours that we were here. You can also contact me as well. This is my email address that you can use for all things related to the Leadership Challenge. You're welcome to jot that down. If you have questions, if you'd like more information, it's something I'm happy to help you with. If you're interested in doing the LPI, reach out. right? Because it's something that is done, it's doable. Other things that can be done is doing an actual workshop at your school or in your community. These can be done in person. They're also done virtually. So a lot of the stuff I have done the past year, a good amount of virtual content, but in person works as well. And we could do what I have done in the past. There's kind of like a 3-hour version, which is what we've done similar to that today. There's also a full day, similar to what we've done in the ISNA Ed Forum, and there's also a full 2-day workshop. So obviously to get the full benefit is to do the full time, right? And to have participants do the LPI before coming to the workshop, and then actually receiving the LPI at the beginning of the workshop. And then each of those behaviors that we're talking about, you're actually looking to see what you said, what others are saying, and you're brainstorming together. There's a lot more discussions in breakout rooms to talk about, here's what I want to work on. Here's what I think I can do to get better. What do you think? And kind of harnessing the genius in the room with your colleagues to kind of move forward. Are there any questions that anyone has before we say our goodbyes for now?
Brother William, I have a question that is not related to today's workshop. Can I ask you later? I will send you an email.
Sure, send me an email. Right? I'd be happy to answer. If it's something you'd like to ask me privately, I'm happy to help with that. All right. Another thing you all could do is join CISNA, which is I think many of you have, right, having joined this, or if you haven't, that's also something where you could get access to sort of resources like what we're talking about for today. Okay, so my email contact is there. It is an absolute pleasure to meet all of you. I hope it is not the last time that we're able to talk together. I look forward to being able to do more of this through CISNA, and also try to help you all as you need to the best of my ability. All right, so may Allah put barakah in all of the work that you're doing. May bless you for your efforts in trying to grow and get better to serve the ummah. And I hope everyone has an absolutely fantastic day, and have best of luck to everything that you're doing as a leader.
I mean, Brother William, thank you so much. I wish this was just part one of so many others, but I know that our time is limited. And so I want to remind everybody that normally we will meet on the 3rd Saturday of the month. So our next meeting will be on October 16th, which will be with Brother Habib Qadri. I know, Sister Esma was referring to the sharing of the vision. He's going to be talking about building communications and community partnerships. Habib, as you know, is so well experienced. And so we were grateful that he was able to get tapped into to present for us for 2 weeks from now. So make sure that you jot down the time in your calendar. I will remind you the day before with another link for you to join in for that webinar. And last chance for any questions. Going, gone. All right. Have a great 2 weeks, inshallah. Thank you so much for joining with us. And may Allah bless you all for the work that you do. Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Alaikum
Alaikum salam. Alaikum salam. Jazakumullah khair.